Good morning again. It's actually Saturday, the 1st of May, and I was hoping to go out for a walk, but it's got all drizzly and grey, so for want of something to do, in a way, I thought I'd do some art, and I thought I'd record it and see how it goes. I wanted to do something that was relatively small, that was something a bit different, and something that made use of a piece of, for want of a better word, an ephemera. And this is a photo that I've taken from this, which I've had in my stash for a number of years. Don't even know if they're still available, but they're by Tim Holtz. It's called Photobooth, Tim Holtz and Ranger, and it's all vintage photographs, which I believe are copyright free, are available to be used, and I thought I'd choose this one. The paper I've got here is a piece of smooth, heavyweight cartridge paper. It's 20 centimetres this way by 14 this way, I think. If I remember rightly, yes it is. Don't ask me what that is in inches. It's a little bit smaller than half an A4, half a letter sized paper, but it suits me fine. And I thought it's the perfect size to pop this on and to do some drawing around it to make like a frame, or cartouche in Zentangle speak. But it's Angela, so I'll do as I wish. But before I do that, this is slightly off-white, and I thought that I'd like some colour in the background. So I'm going to make use of some distress inks, and these are just the original distress inks. They are water-based dye inks that are reactive with water always. I'm not going to use any water today because it will wrinkle the paper and change its properties too much and make it a bit lumpy and bumpy, because this paper, you can use water on it, but it's not the best paper to use water on. And I've just got a piece of something called cut and dry foam. It's sort of like white squishy foam on one side and black, it's a bit like thick craft foam on the other side. And I'm using this to apply the ink, just gently, lightly. I don't want a lot of colour, but I do want to make it enough that it adds interest, and I'm not being particular about where it goes. If it ends up patchy, so be it, because I quite like grungy background colours. Excuse the noise of my table squeaking. My table really isn't all that stable. I need something that's a lot heavier duty, but I've got a lot of shifting of things around to do. So this first colour I'm adding is tea dye, and I pop that on the top. It's very subtle, it's a subtle difference you can see around there, but it's enough that it adds some tone to it. Hopefully it'll help that image there just to stick out a little bit. That's what I'm hoping anyway. Just realised I wanted to get a metallic pen to use. Move that out the way. I'm just using a piece of paper to protect my fingers from ink, so I don't have to wander off and go and wash my hands. So there we are. So that was tea dye. Pop it back in the storage tin if I forget. I want to add a bit more colour around the outside. So the next one I want to use is Rusty Hinge, which happens to be one of my favourite browns. It's just slightly deeper, and it's got this lovely, I suppose vaguely a rusty colour. It's more orangey than brown. It's really quite nice. I think so anyway. But it's getting it round the edges. And what I love about using distress ink is as you go around the edges, you get an awful lot of ink over there, which gives it that automatic kind of border or edge. And I've mentioned this before, but I do like a distinct border and edge on my work. It's just how I roll, I suppose. So there's that. That'll do. Actually, I think I might just pop a bit of colour up there. So, yeah, that's a bit better. And then just to make sure I've got that outside edge, sorry, pop that one in the wrong slot. I've got my own way of doing this, which changes constantly. I'm just going to take a slightly darker tone, which is Vintage Photo, and I'm just going to add just that a bit more depth in places. I don't want too much. It's almost like I just want to make it a bit grimy. And around the edges again, it's those edges. This one over here needs a bit more this side. See, it's just subtly darker. And this really takes no time at all to do. Well, it does take time, but not much. I've been wittering and doing this for about 5 minutes. Well, nearly 6 now. It's nearly done. So that, I think, will do me. I say I think it will. Having a look at the screen, I think I do need something a bit darker around the edge again. So I'm looking in my tin, and I think I'm going to go for a lovely reddish brown, which is aged mahogany. And yes, I'm using the same piece of this cotton for dry foam. Oh, now that is lovely. I like reddy browns. I'm not so keen on the grey browns. Sort of like the cooler browns, but reddies, the orange ones are really nice. But that really does add some. Yeah, I'm happier with that. Maybe then I'll just go over it very lightly, all over, just to give everything a little bit of that warmer tone. It's very subtle, but it's there, isn't it? Let's have a look. How does that look? That actually looks really quite nice. What I want to do, I don't have a pencil to hand, do I? Yeah, maybe over here. Right, I have got a pencil here. So what I'm going to do is mark where I want this. Because what I will do then, not worried about pencil lines on here. I can always remove them. So I just want a bit darker, just around where the photograph's going to be. Just that little bit of shadowing just to help bring that photograph out, I think. Photograph to sit upon. As I said, I'd like this colour a lot. Unless I'm going to be drawing with black mostly, this is perfect. I say mostly because who knows what I'm going to do. This could be a multi-part video yet again. Righty-ho, got those. I've got my tin done. I'm going to close that up and pop it out the way along with that. And then the pencil line's almost done. I'm going to adhere this here. Yep, that's right. I'm going to stick it down. And to do that, I've got, again from my stash, from my days of experimenting with making cards, some foam tape. This one's not too thick. It's probably a couple of millimetres. Again, don't ask me what that is in inches. We still use inches. You know, there are foods when I weigh foods, I prefer to work in ounces because the numbers are a bit more sensible. Get nice whole numbers in recipes rather than really bizarre numbers of grams or whatever. So just how it is. Yeah, I can work in it, but I don't have to double check and triple check the numbers, especially if I'm baking. So pop that up. Oh, I was thinking about edging this before I did it, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't go back perfectly, but it does need to go in place because I'm going to work around this. And there we are. There is my drawing. So while I just tidy this up, just a quick moment, there's that. I'm going to go and grab a gold pen. I know I've got one here. It's in my pencil tray, I'm sure. Yep, there it is. Because gold will look absolutely lush on this background. It really, really will. And so I've got that. I'm just going to pop those up, put my scissors away, put these out the way. So I do tend to try to clear up my workspace as much as I can. Grab some glasses so I can see what I'm doing. And I just think that to begin with, I'm going to draw a border around this picture. And because it's me, it's going to be relatively straight lines, but with a wobble. Roughly the same distance, because I really don't want to work up to photograph that line. This is going to give out to me. I'm going to get grumpy. I don't think it is actually. There's enough ink in this one. But I think I'm going to have to put this on my Angela, you need to reorder some supplies list. These are the ones you want, not the experimental ones. So that's quite nice. And this ink, just trying to get it to, oh there you are, you can see it really catches the light, but it actually is a pleasing colour or tone even when it's not reflecting light. So now I want to do something in gold to edge this. So, oh gosh, right, let's go round. These particular pens do work better if you move slowly and you have a very light pressure on them. The ink flows a lot faster if you just put it down, which means I always have trouble with them because I am rather heavy-handed, mate. Dropping me H's all over the place this morning. There we go. So that makes a nice double frame, and then I can fill this with some pattern. Question is what? I think I'll do this one. Now I know this is something in the Zentangle lexicon of patterns. Is it doodah, as in zippity doodah, as in zip? Do you know? I don't really know, but I'm sure somebody will tell me. Obviously, I'm not affiliated, I'm not a certified Zentangle teacher in any kind of way, but, you know, I'm sure I'd have used this pattern before I discovered Zentangle. In fact, most probably my early works of art, I would have, my intricate ones based on architecture and so on, or just playing around to see what patterns I can create myself. So I really don't know, because it was quite surprising when I did discover Zentangle as such. I thought, oh, I've been doing this for years. They've given it a name, not to decry anybody, because it's been packaged, it's been made accessible for anybody. Whereas I was doing this kind of stuff in work that is much bigger, much more ornate perhaps, and very much inspired by architecture and sculpture and patterns throughout history. So kudos to them. And of course, you know, I'll go, oh, I like that one. And I'll look at it, and it's nice that somebody else has worked out a way of drawing some of these patterns step by step. It means that it takes out that bit of work for me sometimes. But no doubt I've taken and learnt things from the Zentangle method as I've played with it, and when I'm low on energy, motivation, or when I'm just finding life a bit difficult, I often slip into an artistic comfort zone. And I suppose this here today could be considered a bit of an artistic comfort zone in many ways. But, you know, there we go. That actually works quite nicely, I think. Just give it a moment or two to have a look, see if I can get the light on it. Oh, there we go. really works. And while that's drying, I'm also going to do, because that border is just way too wide, so it's just there's space in there for just a row, a line, a border made out of fairly equidistant and equal sized dots, because, well, dots are dots, possibly universal appealing, unless you've got that disorder that it's a fear of dotty patterns, and I can't remember what it's called, but someone I know has it, and anything I draw that's got dots in, they go, oh, I can't look at that, I'm scared of it. And I'm not making light of it, I'm just aware that it is a real issue, and I try not to show them artwork that may have lots of dots in it, or comprised of patterns of dots. I'm not quite sure how, why or where it comes from, it just is. So there we are. I'm including it in mine because I quite like dots. Now then, that's sort of like the frame around that, and it's very, very rigid. And what I want to do before I even, rigid? Yeah, it is rigid. It's a nice, solid shape there. What I am going to do is draw a pencil border around all four sides, and it is going to be border, pencil. I'm not doing it in ink because if I go over the pencil it really doesn't matter, but I want some of the coloured background to be uncoloured, so it forms that border, that edge. And this is the best way, otherwise I will go right up to the edge of the paper, I'll forget what I'm doing, and so the pencil line is just there really as that reminder. But if some forms, some things just creep out of it, that's fine by me, as long as it's not all of them. So just a reminder. I've got a 0.3 fine nib, fine liner, artist pen, it's the uni pin. And I think I better mention, I should have right at the start, I'm not sponsored by anybody for any of this. Everything I'm using has been bought with my own money. And I'm not selling it particularly, although I guess this could be mounted as a card and I could put it up on Etsy, or I put it up for sale if somebody really wanted it. Because to be honest with you, I'm beginning to overflow with art projects. Having said that, a lot of stuff I do these days is digital, but I still like to get pen on paper, and every now and again I like to get these distress inks out, and I've got distress inks and I've got distress oxides. I haven't got the complete set because I haven't had the 2020, 2021 releases, but I'm planning to, I think, because the latest one, which is a sort of like that dusty green that you get on copper, the verdigris that you have on copper I really like, so dusty greeny blue, so that could be a possibility. So that gives a much darker edge as well, but it doesn't take away from that gold, and I'm sure that I'll find a way of working gold in throughout the pattern. Now I just need to decide what I'm going to do. I could keep on repeating and putting more and more rectangles around this, but that's not me. It's organic motifs. So let me pick somewhere, a point to start. I think I'm going to start down here. So let me start with daisy. Oh, daisy style flower. Now my mind is wondering, oh, do I want to make this all symmetrical, or as symmetrical as I can make it hand drawing it? And the chances are that I may, but I think it's more likely that I will perhaps do it diagonally and not worry too much, because I haven't centered this photograph in any kind of way, shape or form, and I'm fine by that. It's roughly centred from side to side, but top to bottom there's more space at the bottom than the top, which leads to possibilities and options. Perhaps there's space down there for me to put a quote or a word in, something that would go with this photograph for some purpose of it. It says on here, love, I don't know, K, hey, nay, don't know, but inverted commas 41, so I'm guessing it was in 1941, looking at the hairstyle. So there we are. They're not even equal. In fact, that's a very strange looking one, but I'm fine with that. Okie doke, so what would I like coming from these? You need a leaf, the flower in my book. That's one of my favourite kinds of flowers. And if I'm going to make it roughly diagonally symmetrical to begin with, I need to do that there. Let's add a couple more of these. As I'm doing this, I put the bread maker on early this morning. It's now nearly midday, and the bread smells absolutely delicious downstairs. It really, really does. And it must probably be done in by about 12:30, I would think. There's nothing like the smell of fresh baking bread. And yep, I have a bread maker. It does small loaves, so I can do a pound loaf, which is great for me. And but it does bigger ones. And yes, I could do it all by hand. I could knead it and everything like that. But I most probably wouldn't now. I don't think my hands would like it very much. My wrists certainly wouldn't. And I need my hands and wrists functioning for things like this. Now I am aware that I am making this motif perhaps a bit bigger than I ordinarily would, but I'm fine with that too, because it then gives options to add colour or shading. I know I've got colour in the background, but there's no harm in either enhancing or using colours that would work with this, especially water-based colours, because the distress ink will actually dissolve into that colour and will practically disappear if you use a colour that's intense enough. It doesn't have to be very intense, but just intense enough to overpower the very slight distress colour. Because remember, there's only a little bit of ink actually on the paper. It's not a lot, but it's enough to colour it. And when you add water and it gets diluted in the water, it disappears practically. And I could do that because these pens are pretty much water resistant, close to waterproof. They can move a little, but before I do anything like that, I'd want to give this some time to dry fully for the distress ink to, and also for these pens too, because they do take a bit longer when I've coloured the paper like this to fully dry and not react to water. Something they have in the distress ink that does that. Don't know what. The chemist part of me, the scientist part of me goes, oh, I'd like to know. But the artist part of me goes, nah, not necessary. You know how it works, you know how to make them work for you. Just stay with that, girl. That's good enough. That's fine. I'm still often curious about things from a scientific point of view, because I'm still that person. Just because I no longer teach science doesn't mean that I've given up on science, far from it. Don't always keep up with it, but I'm often very interested in things of a very scientific nature. Now, I've done those too, but now it's what do I do from here, and this is where I'm likely to change things. I think I'm going to put some of these motifs in. Is this Mooka in the realms of Zentangle? I think it might be. Not entirely sure, but you know, not referring to Zentangle. But I do like these kinds of organic patterns. Organic patterns are great because they will work in any kind of shape and space, especially if you don't want them to fit exactly, especially if they don't need to fit exactly. It's not whether you need them to, they just don't. Well, I suppose you could make them if you get finicky and pernickety about it. But as it is, that actually works nicely because this will go up to that line and fill that relatively small gap in that was there in a nice kind of organic-y kind of way. Organic-y? I know what I'm talking about. And I guess it makes sense as you're watching. That's okay there. Beginning to look quite nice. Just having a look up at the screen, because looking at things from a distance sometimes you get a better perspective, and this is one of the nice things about recording this on video, is that I really can get that perspective. That's something I miss with digital art, because I don't miss it because I can do it digitally, but I have no concept of actually how big the image is physically. Working on paper gives me that. So I've got that. Right then, it's looking okay. I think I just want to perhaps bring one around there. Make it a bit thicker there. That actually helps these to stand out. And I am going back and forth as I notice little things. Always done this. Just sometimes I miss that connection between lines that I'll want there. That's especially important if I'm going to work digitally. Not that I can't fix it digitally, but it just is a bit of a pain in the backside. So there's that. Okie dokes. What next? I think I know what I want to do. To add another border here so it disappears under these flowers, which is quite cute. Cute? I'm not sure it is cute, but it's nice. Oh, that one is not perfectly same distance, but do you know what? It doesn't really matter. It just gives it that extra line. And I could do something with that. Tempting. Very tempting, but what I am going to do instead, perhaps add two more. Okie dokes, let's have a look. So that's quite nice. That one. Okay, now then, it doesn't have to be precisely the same under here, the gap, because they're separated, and I guess our eyes work out how things are. That's a bit narrower, but I'm not worried about that at all. Take those up to the leaf on that side. So this then just, it's almost like a layered frame going on here. That's going to be interesting if I add colour, because I can certainly do that. It's quite nice to have the leaves sneaking under there. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, how am I going to cope with this one? What am I going to do? divide this up into squares, roughly equal, but that's not critical. And I am starting at the corners and just, I want a box in the corner. Otherwise it gets all a bit weird. Partial boxes or half boxes and unequal sizes, and it's much easier. Oops, that's a bit smaller than I wanted it. It's fine, because the unequal ones will be tucked away underneath these lovely leaves, which is perfect. Got hair. Sorry, long hair falling out my head. I have got long hair and I haven't tied it up, so I will do later. So that's as far as I get here. Okay. I'm going to do one of my favouriteest patterns in here. There are patterns and motifs that I will use again and again and again in my work, simply because I love them. And there's something about them that goes with my work and its style, perhaps, or just the way my brain works. And others I'll draw on as I need, but this will be one of my favourite ones. It's something that I saw in not Anglo-Saxon, early Celtic art, particular motif. It's quite common in there, and of course I've mentioned before, I do have a bit of a thing for Anglo-Saxon art, as I do many things. Did I say Anglo-Saxon? It's La Tene, or, you know, Iron Age culture art, but it features so many places and so many times. The little shapes that form are like ginkgo leaves. The actual pattern itself, just reaching over for this, is really quite simple. The individual square, centre, and then curves. I go like that. That would be interesting on its own, I guess. But like that. And then for this one, I reverse the curves to the box that's next. So they go the opposite way. But you can also make a pattern by having the curves go all the same way. It's just I like the ginkgo leaf ones just a bit more, because there is just something really pleasing about the ginkgo leaves. Turn that. Of course, I'm so familiar with this that I just work it in my own way. And how I do it varies as I work. I think it varies in which direction I'm working on the particular border. So that's one. That'll be an interesting one, again, to colour in, perhaps, to bring out these patterns. I'm not going to try and work out whether I'm actually starting in something that would actually mirror this in reality. To be honest with you, it's not that important. I say in reality as in, if I did this on a real frame, then we'd have it finishing in the same way on each corner or whatever. No, it doesn't matter. To be symmetrical. This one may end up being symmetrical, I don't know. You can see how I link boxes beside each other with a curve that goes from one of those central dots to the other. And I always put those central dots in sometimes, because this is only a tiny border, be black dots. Sometimes it'll be black dots that've got a white dot in them, so like a central point. Sometimes a circle, sometimes the inner black dot or seed will have a border around it. Depends how big I do it. But there we are. That actually looks quite nice. And I think what I'm going to do as well is, while I'm thinking about it, no, I'm not, because I don't like just gold dots on black. Gold on its own is great, but I don't like it. It just doesn't feel right to me. So I'm beginning to get this going. So that's really quite nice. I'm happy with that, I think. Now then, what am I going to do down here? I think I want to add that one. Quite nice actually. Okie dokes. Not sure I like that now. It'll be alright. Okay, next. Thinking where I want to go now. I think I'm going to go here. I think I first encountered this kind of pattern when I was looking at Neolithic burial tombs, and I'm sure this one or something similar to this was in some of the stones at Newgrange in Ireland, Northern Ireland. These patterns have been around for millennia, and there's something about it that is very human, satisfying in its way. It's something about it that we seem to like. Now I'm attaching these all higgledy-piggledy because it gives them a more organic feel, and having them going off in different directions, it adds that element of, I suppose, surprise, and it becomes more of a texture than, you know, a geometric pattern. And that's more in keeping with the rest of what, more or less the rest of what I've done, or parts of it, these organic bits on the edge. But I could, if I chose to, morph this, change it gradually so it becomes more regular in pattern. I'm not entirely sure I want to do that. I'll see how it goes. It may be that we end up with a circular kind of arrangement here. Around the outside of this particular area. Just realised I didn't know what I was talking about before I went off on a tangent about art and goodness knows what. But that's what you get when I'm drawing. My focus is mainly on my drawing. The rest of it, pretty haphazard. And if I go quiet for a moment, it's because I am concentrating on what I'm doing. I think this is definitely going to end up in a couple of parts. So I'm on 40 minutes for this already. It's a good start. Oh, I did 4 loops around that one. In the grand scheme of things, is anybody... Yep, 3 loops. 3 loops there. Is anybody going to notice? Most probably not, especially if I hide some more in here. I'll do some more. Not 3 loops, 4 loops, it's 3. Tell I've had a headache this morning. It is lifting. The painkillers have kicked in. And hopefully by this afternoon, my head will be quite clear. I say hopefully. I ain't going to hold my breath because often after I've had a headache I end up exhausted. It can be quite migrainey. So I mean about it coming round in sort of like almost scallop shells, yeah. Scallop shells? Don't know what I meant. I prefer arches. So, cwtch one in there. Cwtch is a Welsh word. And it has many, many uses. And I'd never heard it until I met my long ago ex and the family. And I was told, oh, give us a cwtch means give us a hug. So I thought, okay, cwtch means hug. And then they said, oh, can you cwtch this away? And I thought, you want me to hug it, to a piece of food? And I thought, that can't be right. So I said, what do you mean cwtch it away? I'll put it in the cupboard. Okay, then. I'll put it in the cwtch it in the cwtch. And I went, what? And the cwtch was what they referred to the cupboard under the stairs. And then they didn't have a dog, but somebody else did. And they said to the dog, will you go and cwtch? And it meant, will you go and go to your basket, go and sleep, go and settle down. Multi-purpose word or what? All in context. And I also discovered that if you cwtch something away, you cwtch it away for later. Put it by for later on, for some indeterminate amount of time to keep it safe. Cwtch it away, keep it safe. It's a very curious language. It's an interesting one. I've lived in Wales most of my life, all bar the first 5 and a bit years. So I guess I'm now naturalised, although, those who are purists would say, oh no, you're not. But never really got to grips with the Welsh language more than I did O-level Welsh when I was in secondary school, between the ages of, what Welsh then was between 11 and 16. A little bit less than 16 for me because I was one of the youngest in the year. And I used to love Welsh until I studied O-level, and the teacher I had was particularly unforgiving of me having such an English accent and finding it difficult to pronounce some of the vowels like O and so on. And I did my best. And really it put me right off and gave me a bit of a complex about speaking Welsh and learning Welsh. And then a few years back, or quite a few years back now, when I was teaching, there's an expectation for you to work not fully bilingually, but to have elements of Welsh in your lessons, whether it's just greetings like Shmai, Bore da. Shmai means hi, Bore da means good morning, Prynhawn da, good afternoon, Nos da, good night. And, doing the days and the dates and simple instructions in Welsh, perhaps counting, just using little bits wherever you can as relevant to a particular subject or lesson that you teach and so on. And, pupils would ask, I'm mynd i'r tŷ bach, can I go to the toilet? Oh, sgwelwch yn dda, please. And you get diolch for thank you and so on, just simple stuff. So it becomes an everyday kind of thing to do. And I was worried because I'm not very good at things like that. And for those of us who weren't very confident in Welsh, we actually had some lessons, sort of like very basic kinds of conversational Welsh and things that we could use in lessons perhaps that will give us some practice and some confidence in using it. And one of our old members of staff who'd retired came back because she was a Welsh teacher, and she'd taken up, post retiring from teaching, a job, I think, in community education, community Welsh lessons. And she kindly came back and did some time with us. And she was so lovely and so nice, and recognised that people were doing their best, even if they were struggling with pronunciation and their accents weren't exactly right. That it helped me to break down some of the barriers I had previously. So rolling on several years, I've often thought, I need to learn Welsh, I'll have a look at Welsh lessons, and I never signed up for them because of my social anxiety and so on. And then during the pandemic, something cropped up in one of my social media feeds from the Welsh Government, Welsh Assembly, the Senedd, about Duolingo and, being a great place to learn Welsh. So I thought, I'll have a look. I did. I had a free trial. And then I signed up for the paid version because you learn at your own pace, you practice daily, is the ideal thing. It doesn't have to be a lot of time, although the further on you go, the more you end up doing, because you need to renew lessons. So, that if you finished a group of lessons on something, after a certain amount of time, you have to go back and review it because it helps to embed the knowledge. So the more lessons you've completed, the more reviews you have to do before you pass along, kind of thing. But that's fine because that's how your brain works. You've got short-term memory, long-term memory. And as I'm getting older, bits of it don't quite work as well, perhaps, or not older, I don't think. I think it's more to do with things that have happened in my life. And I'm enjoying it, but I know that sooner rather than later, I'm going to need to find an actual class that I can practice speaking and listening to people and responding. Because although you practice saying these things on Duolingo, it's just having the knowledge of the grammar. It's not actually using them to communicate as such. And that is the bit that's trickiest for me. But I've noticed that I'm beginning to respond to questions or sort of like translations perhaps, or listening, or when you're spoken to in Welsh by the app, that I actually understand I don't have to translate things to English necessarily now. It's not with everything. Some things I still have to sort of like stop and think, what on earth does that mean? And the same when it goes from English to Welsh, but that fluency, that ability to think in a different language is going to take time, and I have to give myself a break for that. But I'm enjoying it. Whether I'll learn any more languages via Duolingo, I do not know, but we shall see. I've just noticed that all of this year particularly, that's a lot more orderly. This one here looks like some kind of chrysanthemum, some other kind of flower. That wasn't intentional, but it's quite nice really. I like that. I do like that. I'll get a different pen. I've got a 0.1. I sometimes find that when I've added something that's quite dense in black, other things need that adding to them, otherwise they look a bit bare. So I'm quite simply going to go put little lines here because they just help to darken that central bit. It just adds that bit of, I suppose, weight of colour, density of colour, contrast almost. but it also gives a little bit of an illusion that the petals are behind the central bit. My brain isn't working, I can't even think what the central bit of a flower is called. But it's where all the stamen are. And I remember that. How mad is that? No rhyme or reason. And the leaves I may go into and add some like veins or, you know, patterns on there or whatever. But that looks a bit nicer. And I've just noticed the time. I've been working on this for 50 minutes, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a huge amount of time considering how long I do spend on artwork. But I think that for today, or for now, that's enough, because I need to go and check on my bread. And I'm having a get together with some friends on Zoom at 1 o'clock, so I'll need to get some drink and sort myself out and what have you. And perhaps I'll carry on with this later on today and add a second part, or join them all together. You could end up with a very long video though. Perhaps I'll just take my words out and not speak, but not highly unlikely. But I hope you're enjoying this. It's a little different perhaps, but it is nice. And that bit of gold is just lovely in the middle. It just that might be the only place I add gold to, actually, because it just makes that photograph special, and that's what is supposed to be the focal point, not everything else. So in some ways I wish I'd got some coloured, some ready brown fine liner out to draw with, but black will do, and one way or another. So thank you for listening. If I don't add on the second part of this video, have a good rest of Saturday and take care.